lovely to have you all here. Let's start with Max. You did regular theater, if something can be called regular. You got into improvisation. You are now into clowning. You also make masks. You make objects as well. So tell us about your work and tell us about how you got into theater and what have you been doing.
As a child and also as a teenager, I was not interested in theater or um, more. My parents were not interested, and I get not in touch with it. And also in school, there was no chance to see it. So um, when I moved to the town where I live now, some people said to me, "Hey, there's a training for theater." It was classical theater, and it's always fun. And then I started there to join it, and it was really always every week 2 hours. It was wonderful, but I had no interest to go on stage. But then the director came and said, "We have a play, and you are in it." And I said, "No." And then yeah, I did it, and it was wonderful, and I did it for 5 6 years regularly. And then I wasn't so interested, and just um, somebody told me there's a lady who teaches improvisation, and I was thinking, okay, learning the lines is not my best side, so perhaps it's good. So I started improvising, and it was the same for a year. We are training, and then the teacher came and said, "We make a show," and we all say, "No, no," but we did it, and so we played for a year regularly in the theater, and then the theater decided, no, we don't want to have improvisation anymore in our house. So we made our own group. So I come into this improv scene. And after some years, I was traveling to Canada. Perhaps you know Keith Johnstone, one of the who events in a way improvisation theater, and I was there for 3 weeks in a residency. And yeah, then it starts that I think about my own improvisation, and also I got in touch with playing with masks and mask making there. And for some years, I was had my own ensemble. We played in whole Germany, and then I lost a little bit the interest. So it was nice to play, but this pure pleasure after show gets less. So I started to learn clowning, because it's in touch with improvisation, but it's not the same. And I get new aspects, and it was really interesting to do the clowning. And then I got a group also to play with the masks. So it comes together. So then I started traveling. I was in India for residencies. I was in England. So I got a lot of influence, and now I think I'm just a performer. It, I don't like this. That's clowning. That's improvisation. That's what else. I think everything what you do and every skill you have comes together in your own thing. If you want to think about your own art, your own thing. And some years ago, I also started to teach, because for a long time I was thinking I'm not good enough to teach, and because I have respect from the teachers and what they teach, and for me it was important to find my own way. Then I could start to teach, and now I'm still performing. I like performing, but it transforms more into teaching for me. And yeah, and beginning of this year, I got my own studio in my hometown. So I have a place to make all, many masks, and also make a space for workshops. Um, Now I'm waiting how the situation with COVID is going on, because at the moment I don't like to have more people in my space, because when I work personally, I want to work with the full body. And at the moment, it don't feel so good. So I hope it will go on.
So we'll move on to Abhishek then. I saw you first in Aquarius's One for One Night Only. It was a beautiful story, beautiful production, very well performed, and I thought acting, and I think you also sang in that. There was also
Yeah.
dance. So it was this image of a complete actor that one got to see, and that's something which was very remarkable about that production. It was talking about something very serious, uh, about the transgender community, and it's tying it up to the myth. All the actors were performing comprehensively, not just one particular dimension. They're all singing. It was kind of a musical. That was really overwhelming. And then, of course, I got to know more about your company, the Misfit company, organizing workshops, and you can tell us more about what you do overall.
It's great that you started with One Night Only, because I think, as far as I can remember, that was my dream, to be a triple threat performer, as they say. I wanted to be that. I wanted to be an actor, singer, dancer. I was fascinated by that. But of course, when I was young, the only things I loved to do was sing music and eat food. Like, these are the only two things that I was passionate about. So I always thought I'd possibly get into one of those lines. But when I was in high school, because I could sing, I landed the lead part in Fiddler on the Roof, the role of Tevier. And that was kind of that. I mean, every actor has that moment, right? That moment that changes your life, and you realize that, oh, this, why have I not been doing this all along? This is what I want to do, and stuff like that. So that was that moment for me, and it was great. Even though I went to UK to study, I went to Birmingham. I studied BSc Honors Business and Management from Aston University. But it's just one of those things that you had to do, because at that time you were like 3 years undergraduation and acting. Not so sure, right? It didn't seem like the obvious choice. But fortunately, just a stone's throw away from my university, there was Birmingham School of Acting, and I enrolled for this evening program over there. I started doing that. Then we got kind of formed a theater group, had a production over there, and I've always been training in singing, so that was always with me. I'm a Carnatic trained singer, so that's almost like a family tradition thing. Oh, he's 5 years old, let him start singing classes. It's one of those things. So that's how, and I'm so thankful, because that kind of really gave me the foundation. So even today, whatever I can sing is because of my 7 to 8 years of Carnatic, training. And the only thing that was left was dancing, but I was a fat child, so I thought fat people couldn't dance, or shouldn't dance or whatever. But then after I lost weight, I came back to Bombay after graduation. I trained in jazz, contempt, ballet. I just started messing around in the field, right? You're not really sure. We're running around like headless chickens. You come back to Bombay. Bombay as a city, especially for an actor or anyone who wants to be in this industry, it's so overwhelming, and you have no idea where to go, who to speak to, what to do. You're just scrambling around, trying the best you can. Fortunately, things did work out. I got like 3 4 really good screen gigs. In fact, my one of my earlier projects was Un Plus Un, which is a French film by two-time Oscar-winning French filmmaker Claude Lelouch, with Shreya Pilgaonkar, in fact. I did another film produced by Shujit Sarkar, a web series on Sony Live called Tan Lines. So all those things were happening, and post that is when actually the journey of theater started. My first big one being Gandhi the musical, where I got to play Gandhi in that. Even though I did the screen gigs before that, they were good, they were fun, and I learned a lot. But going on stage and doing Gandhi was really like a pivotal moment in my journey, I would say, right? And since then, the theater journey began. Started doing a lot of productions here, there with QTP, AK Various, all of that stuff. And where actually it all came together was at Duende, because I think till then I had trained as an actor, singer, dancer, but they were quite fragmented. I wasn't able to find a way to kind of integrate them and funnel them together. How do I get them all together as a performing artist? Sure, I wanted to be a triple threat performer, but how do I get them together? And I think Duende kind of opened the doors, or really really guided me in that sense. Duende and John. Misfits, in fact, I registered the domain name right after Duende. So Duende was one of those shifts as a performing artist, as a creative thinker, because I think in Duende, when you improvise, it really empowers you because you are in control. You are the creator. You're not waiting for anyone else. You decide what the impulse is, and you kind of respond to that on your own. That really shook me up in a way, because I was like, okay, now I'm an actor. Sure, I've got some work, I've got some amount of credibility, but still, all I'm doing is waiting. I'm waiting for a call. I'm waiting for a shortlist. I'm waiting for an audition. I'm waiting for my shot. After that, I'm waiting for the paycheck. It's you're just always waiting. So I think that bugged me a little. I wanted to take the initiative. I hated that I could not take the initiative. And I think from that emotion is where Misfits was born. And initially, of course, it was just about wanting to do something. Kuch karna hai, Max, that literally means I want to do something, So that was literally the emotion with which I started Misfits. And we had Jhamela, the Arts Fest. We had 2 rounds of it, which went really well. And I'm really proud of, even though the second one was a financial disaster, but I think it still is something that's not been done before. I'm really, really proud of that. And even Elon's workshop kind of really just happened, organically. He called and we were like, sure, why not? Let's do it. What was really interesting is what happened after that, after Jhamela, where we actually evolved into a creative organization working with brands like Bajaj Finance, Aditya Birla Capital. We started doing events for them, all in the HR space. So we essentially became more into the HR solutions space. So that was a really good time. That was 2019 end, and the good time ended there when 2020 began, right? And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for that. It's a very exhilarating journey. Seems like Preeti, your association with theatre is quite different. Quite different in the sense you always wanted to do theatre. You always wanted to work in the domain of, let's say, people, working with people. So your earlier training is in human resource, hotel management first, and then also you did post-graduation at TIS. And then you found a way of bringing these two together, these two areas together. How do you apply theatre for personal and organizational development?
Yeah. So like you said, I've always wanted to do theatre. I still always want to do theatre. I'm still in that space of wanting to do. My journey, I think, even before hotel management, which is really what my initial degree was, a lot of people were very disappointed that being a topper in school, I chose such a career. They were like, "Arey, like you need to be a doctor or engineer or lawyer or something. What is this hotel management?" So I think my path towards misfitness started there. But I think what I really met at hotel school, again, this was, going to the hostel away from the bubble of a very protected upbringing, I would say. It was like the so-called perfect, if I can say, or imperfect now. You go in the car, you go to school, you come back, you have these extracurricular classes that you go to, you socialize, you come back. Like even right now, this city where I've lived for so long, I really wouldn't know enough about it, right? Because I've been pretty much blindfoldedly taken around it while I've been growing up. So to me, I think what was at the heart, what excited me about hotel school was that there are options available later. So I always had this thing that there have to be options. Like I can't get into something that is closed and say, okay, this is it, right? So that fear of commitment. And the second thing was this thing of, I love people, I love interacting with people and all of that. But I think it also allowed me a space for experimenting with arts in a different way. I was trained in Bharatnatyam. So yes, I'm also very thankful for my classical training. I did my Arangetram and everything while I was in class 9. So I think that, of course, started my liking towards stage, towards spotlight. I had also this interest in theatre, but I could never pursue that because I was good at dancing. So it was like, no, you can't do theatre. You can't go into those aspects. You have to be in dance. And so it's like that thing, no, which is luring you, and then it attracts you even more because you can't get it. And so that continued actually even through my college time. What also happened there was meeting a very interesting teacher who started a course for us called the Applied Behavioral Sciences. Now, this to me was magic at that time because, through some psychometric tests, through asking a few questions, this man sitting there was like, telling me my entire life or my personality or how I look at things. And I was like, I want to do what he does. Like, how does he know all of this? And so that's what sort of got me interested in HR as a profession. I continued to work in hotels. And at some point, I said that if service is at the heart of what I want to do, then I don't want to spend my time sort of serving people who can very well serve themselves. Like they have, I'm like attending to complaints that why was this class of Mercedes sent to me, whereas I asked for whatever other class. And I'm like, oh, sorry, let's send some champagne and cake into the room and, do all of that. And at some point I was like, okay, this is not happening anymore. And so then I quit to study further. After actually about a couple of years of studying at TISS and then moving on into the corporate world, I think I again met that same point of why is my compensation, like 70 lakhs and why is it not 80 lakhs or whatever? And I'm like, how do I spend my time doing this? It didn't cut ice after a while. But what was happening in parallel during this time for me was that my interest in theater, I ended up doing a workshop just to try this out, right? This thing, you're in Bombay and synchronicity has a role to play. Like suddenly you see this poster and someone says, yes, this is the right one to go to. Suddenly you meet Satyadev Dubey, not knowing who he is. And you go up to say, hi, I'm Preeti. Who are you? And he says, I'm Satyadev Dubey. I said, okay, nice to meet you. What do you do? So he says, yeah, I mean, I've done some workshops here at Prithvi. Aajao, come sometime. And I would run from my work. I would say, okay, I'm going to be back in some time. I'd take the auto from Andheri, east to west, attend his workshop, and then come back into office, like just pretending I just went for some chores. But anyway, I think what was happening was that the more I allowed myself into the acting space and the process that it took me through, I felt that it served this whole need for leadership development that I think, there was a lot of focus that was happening on this in the corporates, right? And how to get out of this whole PowerPoint world and things. And I said, hey, but what I'm doing in my time after office, because every day after office, I would go for rehearsals. I was working with Ekjut at that point of time. That whole process of, how you're preparing to get into a role, what are the aspects that I have to face, my shadow. I have to be somebody who perhaps is not who I am, and these are all to me very real in the corporate space. So that's really the time when it struck me that why can't these two worlds marry? But this, of course, it stayed as a question and then it was frozen like that for many, many years while I was just sort of busy making strategies and presentations and other interesting stuff. I mean, I don't want to say that it was not something that I liked. It took me to Singapore for an assignment, exposed me to a very different kind of culture of working. And that's, again, the time when I enrolled for a coaching program as a personal growth coach, which brought me back. It was like this circle coming back to realizing something about myself, right? Which was, I always grew up with this worldview where keep doing your thing and, someone out there will recognize you when your time is right. You're not supposed to really stand up and say, well, this is what I want and really go and get it. I said, okay, it's high time I realize that this place where I've been working for the last 10 years is not going to give me what I want. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. I'm great at what I do. They're great at what they do. This is just not the place. And the minute I articulated that for myself, things changed around. So I think that was a blessing for me, because I said, okay, now I have a choice either to go back into another corporate job or to really dabble and experiment with what I want to do. And, you know, it was just typing into Google theater for development, and playback theater showed up. And I had no clue what it was. But what was interesting was that for the first time from the Center of Playback Theater, they were doing a workshop in South Asia. And it was happening in Philippines. And I said, okay, I'm going for this. So that's really how my journey started. I had a very different idea when I thought that I would use drama for development. Like right now, the image in my mind is almost like this circus ringmaster kind of a person. Okay, but I think I'm really glad that I've met playback theater, because it got me in touch with the nuances of the work, the simplicity of the work, the allowance for people to be, for things to emerge, for the beauty of improvisation, for the depth of listening to others and yourself, for the different modes of creativity that it allows to incorporate, right? And that's why to me it's so fascinating, and in some way like a never-ending life journey. Though I also understand it is one of those forms where it's like, is it theater? Well, I need 10 lines to explain why it is and why it is not. Is it therapy? No, not really, but it could help. Is it facilitation for? Yes, it is, but also, so I'm like at this no man's land kind of a situation where it's like every sort of community says, okay, you don't belong to us, you don't belong to us, you don't belong to us. And yet it's sort of an intersection of so many places. So yeah, that's really been my journey of then starting off to work with it pretty much individually on my own, from my drawing room, of getting some parents together of my child saying, oh, let's have a play date, put the children together and say, parents, let us also play something, and then say, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then opening it up to like 3-hour workshop, to a 1-day workshop, to then a longer workshop. And that's how a team came about, which has had its own roller coaster journey of forming and breaking and coming together and experimenting then in different kind of places, of simply hearing stories of people and giving it back to them. So I think in some way that is what is satisfying, that this thing of serving people, to me, if I really connect with that word today, it makes it no difference as to sort of which strata or which profile or whoever it is, because I feel that what is being connected is something deeper. It is connecting with the humanness, irrespective. So yeah, that's a journey that I've started, and I'm on.
Thank you for that fantastic elaboration. What I'm really intrigued by is that we have 3 panelists here, if I can include myself within this. 4 lives, very, very different, but there are some mesmerizing common nodes, the kinds of shifts that each of us has gone through at different points in time, not necessarily knowing what exactly is it that you want to pursue, and now being kind of open and kind of stepping or dancing from one area, one discipline, one medium to the other, to the other, to the other, and kind of being an outsider to everything, and also enjoying that you can actually inhabit so many different worlds. So I think that's really fascinating as what I see as a common strand between all the people that are here on the screen right now. One important thing that I would like to just pick up from here, Preeti talked about this one particular teacher. That experience was something which was a very, very important shift. Max, also to do more of teaching now, like you mentioned. And Abhishek, for you, Duende was a huge shift, working with John. If you can just kind of bring in that point of learning, of a teacher, of or whichever way each of you looks at this particular dimension.
So I think for me, again, in Duende, it was just basically about all of it actually coming together and learning how to control it and direct it towards an actual performance, right? And I think how it really helped me is I actually taught a course on creative communications, which was, so they are basically communication design students. We created a course that will help them open up and communicate more effectively in different ways. It's also in many ways based on Alec Padamsi's book. He's one of the few people at the junction of advertising and theater. All my life, I don't think I've had a teacher who's had a massive impact on me. It's never been like, oh man, this teacher has changed my life till Duende, right? That was the only point where it felt like, okay, wow, I really have a lot to take away from this. And since then, actually, I've been teaching a lot, even now online. There's a lot of teaching happening, and I never thought I would teach. And honestly, I still don't call myself a teacher per se. I go and perform my ass off as a teacher. I act like a teacher. It's as simple as that. And again, something that John said, you normally exude the values that you appreciate, and you stay away from the values that you do not like. So it's as simple as that. So I loved John's energy in a class. So when I would go into a class, I would just have that in mind. That's kind of been the impact of teaching and learning in that sense. And learning is always, there's no end to it. Even Whirlpool, which is the production that John directed, one of my biggest reasons for actually doing that, which was produced by Company Theatre, and one of the biggest reasons to do that was just to get back into that space with John and fellow Duendeites, Manjari, and all of them, right? And just have a blast.
So Max, we met at the Kamshed workshop.
Yes.
I remember this moment when we paired, and I was like, let's do it this way, we can do it that, and let's do this. And you were like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. And that way of teaching was new to me.
Yes.
It was a huge shift for me. That was probably one of the most difficult week that I may have spent in my life, not being able to criticize something, because the condition was you are not going to say that it could have been this, it should have been that, because that's like talking about what is not there. You talk about what is there, what you saw, and you work hard to find something good in what you saw. That is what is going to empower the person performing for you. That person deserves it. This is my experience of you. This, you're just listening and you're kind of accommodative and you're saying, fair enough, you're not in a rush. You don't have this need to control and no, it has to be this and this is how it's going to come out. It's like really being open to how it's going to unfold. And that is probably what you mention in your bio when you talk about allowing an actor or a performer to find their own method or their own way.
Yeah, I realized we all four, what we have in common is that we are not in a frame. So normally in dancer had the teacher said that's a frame and you have to fit in, and a singer have to do this and a performer has to do that. So many teachers are trying to put everybody in the same frame, and if you fit in, you're wonderful, you're okay, and if you don't fit in, then you lose. And I think the important thing for everybody who is making any kind of art is to find their own thing. And my big experience was I was in Canada for 3 weeks, and there was one teacher. We worked with him every day, 4 or 5 hours, and he was one of the worst teacher I ever had. It was, you have to imagine there were people from about 20 people from all over the world. They're coming to Canada. The place was founded by Keith Johnstone. That was really, wow, you go there. And this teacher separates the group, people he likes and people he didn't like. And I was on the wrong side for him because I asked questions. And I want to understand why. And he was really like, bash, bash, bash. So there was all, and there was everything he was teaching. I read in the book of Keith Johnstone. So I was thinking, why I'm here. But this man starts in me to think what I want. After this 3 weeks, there was a close friend of mine, was Michael. We discussed and we said, no, that's not the way. No. And after the 3 weeks I went to Edmonton, and there was a Fringe festival, and everything was open. Every improvisation, everything was open, and you talk with the improvisers, and the improviser is also a director and a writer, and it was so big contrast. So I started to think about it. So for me, it was the kick-off to not to trying to do what the teacher is saying, what told you, just to find what fits for me and what not. And it starts the process. It was a long process. So I also worked with Duende. I worked with Andrew Morrish, Frankie Anderson. So it's and it starts for me to realize not everything what the best teacher could tell you is right for you. And I realized that every performer is unique, and I just could help someone. I could bring impulses. You could do a training where you make experiences, but the really important thing is that the people start to think, start to feel, and also in Germany, the improv scene is really like this teacher. That's right. A story is like going like this, and the characters, you have to learn characters, and you have to learn this, and you have to learn this. That's always about what you're doing wrong or where you have to learn more. And yes, I want to learn more, but my thing, I could not say there was one point where it's changed. I know it started in Canada, because you have to imagine that's a starting point, and I think when my mind changed and I realized that I want to think about it, I want to, or perhaps most of the time I don't have to think about it. It's more the feeling. What I learn in every workshop is so wonderful for me to bring it together, and in a way I try to bring this into workshops when I'm teaching, and for me it's just, I don't want to teach right or wrong. I always say in the beginning, sorry, I only could teach my art, and perhaps it's wrong for you. Perhaps I'm the totally wrong teacher. Then I have to say sorry.
Preeti, with you, it's much more nuanced, much more difficult, probably, because there isn't a clear definition of what is the craft that somebody's learning with you, because you're not really there as a teacher. You're there as a coach, which is I mean, it's a strange nomenclature. And then a personal development, personal growth coach. I don't know what that really feels like, because it's not clear what is it that we are learning. It's definitely not clear what the problem is, where the issues really lie, and there definitely is nothing that you can blame anything on, which you yourself put very beautifully a while back, where you said that, okay, they are doing wonderful work, what I'm doing I'm great at, but it's just that we are not coming together. So to make people realize that, and you're using theater as well as you're using other creative mediums, what is that process like, if at all it's possible for you to kind of talk about it?
Okay, so in some way, I think we're also shifting. I have in my mind these sort of blurred space of interacting between two, in some way, distinct mediums of connecting with people, right? One is an extremely intimate, private space as a personal coach, where it's one-on-one coaching with a client. And the other is also a personal, intimate space, but it's in a group where the invitation is for people to share their personal stories, right? And sometimes we have a theme, or sometimes it's really very open-ended. But through associations, one story leads to the other, just the way we are talking right now. And that's really what the actors then take back and offer. Of course, in a coaching place, there isn't any other actor. It's just, the two of us. I think I can touch upon these two aspects. One is what is happening in a coaching space. It's again, to me, just creating that vessel. And the less I can interrupt the flow, the better. And just simply what emerges with an open-hearted listening, what resounds there for that person to want to rebuild, reform, or sort of just validate the way it is, whatever it might be.
Like you just said, you articulated something for yourself at one particular point in time, and that changed your trajectory. So this is what you're
Yeah.
allowing when you're listening to somebody. You're allowing them to articulate their trajectory themselves, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that articulation happened for me also in a similar coaching space, actually, where I could re-articulate. And that's in some way what I like to take forward. What was interesting in my training was, and I don't think all coach training happened this way, was to allow and encourage embodiment. Use the space, right? And a lot of coaches are very intrigued with this methodology. And to me, that itself is an application of theater, so to say, right? Because when you hear a client saying that, and I was really angry, and then I'm saying, so can you embody that anger, right? Can you give it a voice, right? And to me, that has a very different quality to the process, as opposed to just, yeah, okay, so you were angry. I hear it. I mean, you're still holding space, but I have this feeling that would have taken things in a different way. It would have had a more heady, yes, what's the solution to this? But perhaps bypassing this thing of really connecting where that anger sits, really allowing that process to come out.
Which I think is very important, because you're not limiting it to an intellectual process of just articulation. It's something deeper, somatic. So you're allowing the body to speak rather than using the language, which takes much longer, and it has its own very specific rules and discipline to be followed. Yeah, very fascinating.
And then sometimes it's like I myself feel a kind of a stuck energy in the place, right? And I'm like, okay, how about you move now? So whatever we are working with, how do I have this conversation, or what's my next role, anything. Let's move in the place and just keep moving and allow your body to simply move, and then find that repetitive movement, and really breathe into it and see what is coming from here. So to find that initial thing is what I use in the coaching place for just anyone. I mean, here we are, in some way we can say we're all artists or we're all non-artists, but here I'm saying just for any person, can you find that source? It's that thing of igniting the spontaneity and finding your answers. And that's what I like about the coaching place, because it's not a place where I'm sitting like, I'm here to tell you what your next life move is going to be. Who am I to say anything?
But does the space actually get animated the way you intend it to? Do people respond in this way? Or does it take far more effort to get them to move?
I think it's different for different people, but I would say by and large, I have found that they do play along. And I think there are two things. One is, of course, the physical animation. And sometimes it perhaps starts off more visually, bringing intuition in, right? Like suddenly I'm in the middle of a conversation, and then it's for me to tap into my intuitive space. So as much as the client, I need to also sort of be armed with my tools, so to say, with my own complete awareness. And then I'm like, okay, so when you're speaking right now, I suddenly feel like there is a gush of water coming out of a pipe. And then we already have this pre-agreed thing in the beginning where I say I might just blurt out things like this, which make no sense. So you have an option to either take it, build on it, or simply say, well, it doesn't connect with me right now, and it's all okay. but I don't want to stop my flow just because I'm like, oh, how is this going to land on you? And that's very helpful, because then it again takes you into a different, world of images, which can perhaps convey much more about how you're feeling or your situation as compared to trying to put it in crisp words.
Thank you for that. Now I think it's time to look at the elephant in the room. Abhishek, how difficult has the past year been?
So the beginning was, it was terrible, to say the least, right? Because we have no idea what we're doing. With as an actor, though, forget about it, because everything just shut, everything just like cold turkey stopped. I was shooting for a really big film, and it just although it all picked up later, but then everything just stood still, no work, nothing at all. And there was no solution to it, right? And with Misfits, we had just picked up momentum in this HR solution space, and the minute COVID hit, uh, all funds were obviously redirected towards COVID relief, of course. HR took a backseat, learning and development takes a backseat, because that's the first thing where budget cuts happen, because no one cares enough about HR or learning and development as much as marketing. At least marketing always gets the spotlight. So that really, for the first 4 to 6 months, it was just so bad. After a point, I remember, I just got sick and tired of making calls and speaking to people, because everyone was like, there's nothing happening. There's absolutely nothing happening. So the starting was really, really bad. But I think, again, it gave us that phrase of Atmanirbharta, self-reliance. I think that is something that I really took away from COVID, because everything was shut, right? Everything had to be done by yourself. I learned how to cook South Indian food, which is something I've been wanting to do. I was making lunch every day. So small things like this really added great value to me in that sense. Actually doing the cooking and the cleaning of the house. I may sound like a spoiled brat by saying this, but it really was a big thing to get those kind of experiences and just be okay with things not being okay. That was the biggest takeaway. After that chaos phase went off, there was actually a world of opportunities, right? Because now suddenly the entire world was going digital. Everyone was going digital. All companies were going digital. So we, even as a company, we pivoted. We became more of a full service creative agency. We started doing marketing solutions. We started doing social media. And suddenly, before we knew it, we started getting so many clients who said, we want to go digital. We want a website. We want to do social media. We want to do this, that. So that started really picking up. Since then, I guess it's been all right. It's still been tough. Towards the end of the year, when things started opening up, there was some hope. A lot of shoots had picked up. I did a couple of projects, and it started feeling like, okay, you know what, maybe we're heading back into the right direction. But again, in May, boom, the second wave came, and then we were back to kind of square one. Not even, actually, we went, I think, further behind. That way, I think it's been better since, because of the fact that everyone has to go digital. And I'm speaking again very, very specific to Misfits. So we're trying to capitalize on that. Recently, we did an event with a pharmaceutical company. So that's actually the thing. There are some companies that have actually benefited from the lockdown, and pharma companies are one of them, right? Fintech, like financial technology companies, have benefited from the lockdown. Pharmaceutical companies have benefited from the lockdown. The company that we worked with, their team size had doubled in the lockdown through COVID. Right, and their problem was the people didn't know each other because they were constantly working online. So you're only engaging with the person right above you or right below you. You don't know everyone else. So they wanted to do a lot more engagements online to make sure employees get to know each other better. So we did a really a full day digital experience, which was on quite a large scale. I'd say a big achievement for us as a company, a big turning point for us as a company. We've been doing a lot of digital ads, branded content pieces, producing films remotely as well as when we could otherwise. So now it's picking up. Now it's in a nicer space.